London is not just a place on a map. It is a living, breathing organism. For 2 millennia, it has grown, consumed, burned, bled, and reborn itself on the banks of the River Thames. To walk its streets is to walk on top of the bones of empires. To understand the beast it is today, we must watch it grow. We have 5 centuries to cover. 5 distinct identities of the greatest city on earth, from the claustrophobic wooden maze of the Tudors to the imperial capital of the world. Step through the frame. The journey begins now. Welcome to Tudor London. It is small, smelly, and deeply religious. The skyline is dominated not by finance, but by faith. Look at the horizon. Dozens of church spires pierce the sky. And towering above them all is old St. Paul's Cathedral. In the early part of the century, it still boasts one of the tallest spires in Europe, a needle pointing to God, before lightning destroys it in 1561. But this century belongs to one man's ego, Henry VIII. In his desperate quest for an heir and absolute power, he ripped the soul out of medieval London. Over a few turbulent years, he dissolved the monasteries, seizing vast amounts of wealth and property. Hospitals, libraries, and abbeys that had stood for centuries were seized by the crown or sold off to his cronies. But as the monasteries closed, the theaters opened. By the end of the century, under Elizabeth I, London was exploding with a new kind of energy. The population quadrupled. It was a chaotic boomtown of 200,000 people. On the South Bank, amidst bear-baiting pits and brothels, a playwright named William Shakespeare was inventing the modern English language. London was becoming loud, confident, and dangerously overcrowded. The 17th century was London's most traumatic era. It began with blood. In 1649, the unthinkable happened. The king, Charles I, was beheaded by his own people. For a decade, London was the capital of a republic, ruled by the Puritan Oliver Cromwell, who banned Christmas and closed the theaters. But the true horror was yet to come. In 1665, the Great Plague choked the city. The streets emptied save for the dead carts. Over 100,000 people, nearly a quarter of the population, perished in the squalor. Then, the cleansing fire. For 4 days in September 1666, a hellish inferno swept through the city. It erased 4/5 of the city of London inside the Roman walls. The medieval wooden metropolis vanished forever in a storm of ash. Lead from the roof of St. Paul's melted and ran down the streets like a river. But the phoenix rose faster than anyone expected. The city was rebuilt, not in wood, but in brick and stone. It was a harder, more resilient London that emerged, designed by men like Christopher Wren. The new St. Paul's Dome began to rise, a symbol of reason and order that would watch over the city for the next 3 centuries. By the 1700s, London is rivaling Amsterdam as the capital of global trade. It is fat with the wealth of an expanding empire. The air smells of tea from China, tobacco from Virginia, and spices from India. This is the era of the Enlightenment, where scientists like Isaac Newton walked the streets and the British Museum opened its doors to the public. This is the century of the coffee house, the internet of the Georgian age. Here, insurance markets like Lloyd's were born, but it was also an era of mania. In 1720, the South Sea bubble saw the whole city go mad with speculation, only to crash and ruin thousands overnight. But beneath the gilded surface, it was a brutal place. The extreme wealth was built on the back of the slave trade abroad and a desperate, gin-soaked underclass at home. As William Hogarth showed us in Gin Lane, London was rich, but it was not yet civilized. Public hangings at Tyburn were still the most popular form of entertainment, drawing crowds of thousands to watch the condemned die. The 19th century. The Industrial Revolution has turned London into the largest city the world has ever seen. In 1851, the city hosted the Great Exhibition in the Crystal Palace, a glittering glass cathedral dedicated to technology. It was the high watermark of Victorian confidence. But outside the glass palace, the city was dark. It was the heart of an empire on which the sun never sets, but the city itself was often choked by a poisonous pea soup fog. The population exploded and the infrastructure collapsed. By 1858, the great stink of the Thames was so overwhelming that Parliament had to soak their curtains in chloride of lime just to continue sitting. It forced the creation of the massive sewer system that still serves the city today. And in 1863, London did the impossible and opened the world's first underground railway. 7 steam trains ran beneath the streets, carrying millions of workers to their jobs. It was a mighty, steaming industrial monster operating at full capacity. The 20th century began with a funeral. In January 1901, Queen Victoria died. For 63 years, she had been the mother of the nation. As her coffin passed through the silent streets, Londoners felt a cold wind blow. The Victorian certainty was gone, but grief was quickly replaced by a frantic energy. This was the Edwardian era, a brief, golden Indian summer for the empire. London in the first decade of the 1900s was the wealthiest city in human history. It was a time of ostentatious luxury. The Ritz Hotel opened its doors, and department stores like Harrods became temples of consumption. But beneath the champagne parties, the foundations were cracking. The great unrest had begun. Suffragettes smashed windows on Oxford Street, demanding the vote with bombs and chains. Dockers paralyzed the river with massive strikes. The old order was under attack from within. And then, the music stopped. In August 1914, the clocks struck midnight for the old world. Crowds gathered in Trafalgar Square to cheer the declaration of war against Germany, believing it would be over by Christmas. They didn't know that the 19th century was about to die in the mud of Flanders. The golden age of London was over. The age of iron was back. From the wooden medieval city to the peak of imperial power, we have watched London rise, burn, and rebuild. We leave the city here, on the precipice of the First World War, a tragedy that would change the capital forever. Thank you for taking this time-lapse journey through 5 centuries. If you want to see what happened to London during the Blitz, or explore another great city like Paris or Rome, let us know in the comments. Subscribe and ring the bell to step through the frame again.